Hi, I'm Ian Roberts. I've been teaching painting workshops for about 10 years, and if there's one thing that seems most elusive to almost everyone, it's developing strong compositions. No matter what grips you most in the painting process, whether it's vibrant color or bold brushwork, still lifes, portraits, or painting en plein air or working in your studio from photographs, composition is what everything is built on. I'm in Taos, New Mexico, teaching 2 plein air painting workshops, and while here, we're filming a 7-part video course on the fundamentals of building strong compositions. Part 1 is looking at the importance of thinking of your painting as a series or arrangement of abstract shapes, rather than as a subject, say, of trees or people. Part 2 will look at the importance of armature to structure or hang your painting from. Part 3 will look at how your eye moves in the picture plane, and how this one idea, this one skill will help you immeasurably when you're actually painting your painting. Part 4 will be looking at framing and cropping what you've found so you can get the most dramatic and powerful composition from it. Part 5 will look at value and color shapes as the building blocks of your painting. Part 6 will be looking at a series of critiques of the students here in Taos. Part 7 will be a demonstration that I do that takes everything that we've looked at and puts it into practice. So now we'll look at a few of my paintings while we listen to a quote by John Cannaday, the art historian, who was asked by Time Life in the Metropolitan Museum in New York to do a series on the history and appreciation of Western art.
Composition is so fundamental to the creation of pictures that a list of the world's greatest pictures would overlap a list of the greatest compositions in a majority of titles. Yet of all the elements in the art of painting, composition is the one least recognized by the average observer, even when it is playing a major part in his reaction to a picture.
The art historian John Cannaday didn't think there were very many paintings he could think of that were great paintings that didn't have as their foundation a great composition. And I must say I feel the same. I can't think of a painting that I really admire that doesn't have at its basis a strong composition. And yet something so basic to great painting, or even good painting, never seems to be isolated, addressed, and taught. Truly great compositions may be elusive to both create and understand, but some aspects of it must be possible to understand how they work and why. So the nuts and bolts of making great paintings, or even good paintings, may be something that we can look at and analyze so that our paintings are well composed and people can read them, can see them, can appreciate them easily and consistently. Most paintings fail in the first 30 seconds or so because the way the idea is framed and seen is not strong enough, is not dynamic enough. So what's the secret of making great compositions? Let's listen to what 3 artists have to say and see if they can give us a clue to this elusive idea.
As music is the poetry of sound, so is painting the poetry of sight. And the subject matter has nothing to do with harmony of sound or color. Remember that a picture, before being a battle horse, a nude woman, or some anecdote, is essentially a plain surface covered with colors assembled in a certain order. There is a species of emotion particular to painting. There is an effect that results from a certain arrangement of color and lights, of shadows. It is this that one calls the music of painting.
What is central to these 3 quotes? What the artists are saying is that we respond rather than to subjects to an abstract relationship of forms and shapes. Whistler even called his paintings arrangement in gray and pink, and his famous painting in the Louvre, which we normally know as Whistler's Mother, is called Arrangement in Gray and Black, number 1. So these artists recommended looking at paintings as design or composition driven, not subject driven. This is the most important idea here, and we're going to isolate and address this idea through the course of this video with some exercises and illustrations to make it clear. As we noticed from the comments of Whistler and Vuillard, the composition is the force in the painting. It is the abstract design behind the painting that we enjoy. And there's basically 2 kinds: 2-dimensional, where the pattern of those abstract shapes is primary, And we can think of, say, Matisse or a Japanese woodblock as examples of those. And three-dimensional, where the image is sculpted into the picture plane. Now we're going to look at the work of a great abstract painter, Andrew Wyeth. Look at how abstract and beautiful these compositions are. You may say, but wait, he's known for his detailed representational paintings. But behind every painting are the abstract masses that make the composition work. Paul Valéry, the French poet, said to see is to forget the name of the thing one sees. And what we'll be looking at and addressing is looking at arrangements of shapes, abstract shapes, and building the foundation of our painting from there up. And when you get this idea, when it starts to click, it will dramatically improve your painting. To define composition, we could say it's thinking of the whole as you arrange the parts, which is both what you're trying to portray and the brush marks you're actually using, so that you get the effect you want. Let's look at that definition of composition again, and we'll define some of the terms we'll be using in this video. First, there's the picture plane, the surface, the canvas, or the paper that we're actually working on, and its size and its proportions. On that, we're arranging a number of masses or color shapes that tie together with the four sides and the proportions of the picture plane. And those masses are not necessarily just the objects, because look at the background and the table in the bottom left, and we can see it as being conceived as one large dark mass, even though it's two objects. Each of those masses has a value. You seldom need more than 5 or 6 values to create a painting, and the solid structure of the value masses is the foundation of any composition. They belong, they fit. The parts are in relationship to the whole. And let's look at color. Hue is the actual color of an object. It's red or green. That hue can be either dark or light, that's its value, and it can be either bright or dull, that's its intensity. Contained within that is the possibility for warm and cool color. And those are the tools for creating a variety of color shapes that add up to a painting, starting, I'll repeat, with the foundation of the value masses. Then there's the actual brush marks we use, the painterliness, to represent the illusion or representation on the picture plane. They can be invisible, as in an Ingres, or the painting can be about the paint marks, as much or even more than the representation, as in these paintings by Soutine and Diebenkorn. But most people are looking for a balance, like you see in this Korovin and Feshen and Sorolla, somewhere between the mark seen as paint and at the same time creating an illusion. This is where it's important that the brush marks add to the total effect you're trying to create and don't break it apart by being busy or distracting. This painterliness or looseness comes with experience and confidence as a result of learning what we can leave out and what we can exaggerate. But a strong foundation of a few value masses will help you immeasurably if you want to push your color and be more painterly. Two things are essential here. One is to think in terms of the whole, and the other is to innocently train your eye to see how it's reacting to the picture plane, where it's being pulled, where if it's going towards what you want or in fact away from what you want. So how do we do that? How do we start? First, we have to respond to something. Paul Vuillard said there is no art without poetic aim. You wouldn't be watching this videotape if you didn't have poetic responses to things. We see something, we respond, we're moved. That's what calls us to paint or write or dance. You have that, and your call is unique. No one responds quite the way you do. So for the rest of this tape, we're going to show examples and illustrations of how we can take that response and express it into abstract shapes that make powerful compositions. We'll strip everything away that doesn't add to that response, and we'll simplify it. Although most of the examples we'll be using are for landscape, the principles are common to any kind of representational painting. The first step to getting this to happen is to start walking around more. Whether this is a landscape or in your studio with a still life or a figure, the tendency is to arrive, set up, and immediately start painting. But be patient and be attentive. Isolate what you're responding to and sketch that. Spend more time with your sketchbook. It's like a writer's journal. These are your seed ideas, and go out for the morning just with your sketchbook and start thinking in terms of position and not subject. Try and know what it is you're responding to and pare the rest away. Reduce it. Think in terms of masses and their arrangement, not in terms of subjects and outlines. Obviously, if we're painting a figure or a group of trees, it's a subject, but it's how we see that's important. And and we're also going to look at how horizontals and verticals help stabilize a composition. And then one by Rubens and one by Roger van der Weyden. Look at the care and attention they take in structuring their armature. Masses needs a foundation. It needs to hang, and I call that just to play on, stand up. Painting of a convention is better. Because conventions the second would be, say, an S shape, where again we have the horizontal, we have perhaps our center of interest here, off center somewhat, and maybe there's a road or a street this way, and maybe it's the cloud shapes up here that move the eye through the landscape. The third, we could say, is a diagonal, where we might have, a mountain or something coming down to the sea with some, again, some boats or something in the water or the shore coming like this. And so the eye is moving through to the center of interest on the diagonal. A fourth might be something we call the fulcrum, where we have this large mass, heavy dark mass, again we have the horizontal, balanced with a small element, perhaps a person or a small tree. And it's kind of like that fulcrum, like a lever, balancing one against the other, the big against the small. Another one we just simply call grouping, where we've got, again, the horizon, and maybe we've got a group of boats like that, or maybe a group of trees or something, that in and of itself is really the center of interest and pretty much most of the painting, and everything is subservient to that. And the last we could call radiating lines, where again we have the horizon, and maybe we've got some mountain shapes all coming down to our center of interest, and then a river coming off like this, and everything's kind of radiating from that center of interest. And you'll notice the center of interest, we don't put dead center, I have a little bit there, but over like this, and everything is leading to that. Let's look at the idea of armature some more. Look at the next three images and how the horizontals and verticals placed off-center help to stabilize the elements of the picture to the picture plane. And in this landscape, how the S shape holds to the picture plane as well. The armature isn't a set of formulas and rules. It's not that I have to find an L or I have to find an S. It's a way to create a foundation for the value masses, to see it simply and boldly first, so all the effects you make in your finished painting hold together. So let me mention a couple of things of what not to do in compositions that seem to happen over and over again in student work. One is to put the center of interest right dead in the middle, which brings our eye there so fast that we don't tend to move around the composition. Another is to have really strong design elements coming out of one of the corners, a road or something. And what it tends to do is just take our eye out that corner and we just never come back. So if you have an element that you just can't do anything about but go out like that, you soften that edge and then it gets harder down here. So you use the design element, but you just don't keep the eye moving out the corner. A third is having a field or something that does this. And what happens is you just go right out that corner. You might have things going on here. You just go right out there and you never come back again. And the last is having an element at the bottom, could be on a diagonal too, maybe a street, but we tend to enter the painting from the bottom. And if you've got this line, it's just like a hurdle we jump over and we land face first here trying to look at the rest of the painting. So somehow you've got to create a break, either a road or a break in whatever's going on, so that we can get into the painting, because this will just stop us. It's a hurdle to get in. Let's look at some of these composition problems more graphically. We can see here how the dark mass of trees on the right is pulling us out of the painting at the bottom right. One, because the hillside droops to the right so strongly, and two, because the base of the trees runs out of the bottom right-hand corner. Also, our eye is pulled out of the top right by the cloud. By decreasing the angle of the hillside and moving the shape away from running out of the bottom right-hand corner, and by moving the bottom of the cloud away from the top right-hand corner, the composition feels more stable and we stay in the picture plane. Here we can feel how the row of bushes in the foreground stops us from entering the painting easily. We trip over them as we move into the background. Also, the clouds are not designed, even though we might find them this way. By opening up the foreground, it gives us a path into the painting, and we easily move into the background. And the clouds now are arranged in such a way as they help move us into the painting. When you are planning your painting, one, make sure that anything that intersects the edge of the picture plane doesn't end right at the edge of the picture. It just looks unplanned, like you ran out of room, and pulls our attention to it. Incorporate objects into the painting. Incorporate the masses into the painting. And two, make sure the objects don't intersect in such a way that it's ambiguous their placement in space. We can't tell what's in front of the other. Overlaps are the easiest way to create depth. One of the most common things to happen is to find in the process of painting, objects get stylized or simplified to become almost generic. Each tree and mountain or flower or vase has a personality and a character like a face does, and your paintings will become more alive if you're always looking for that and draw it carefully and hold on to it during the painting process. This diagram shows what you might be confronted with in nature. There's not much order or pattern in the stream to help lead us into the painting. Often you'll have more order than this, but it's still a question of seeing what the need is to lead us into the painting and arranging the masses in the foreground to facilitate that. We need to impose the composition on the painting, on the landscape. It's not just a question of cataloging the chaotic jumble of water and rocks in front of us. And I'm going to show you two examples of complex armatures in two great master paintings. This is Venus and Adonis by Rubens. Let's look at the geometry he's using to orchestrate and balance a complex figure composition. He's divided the painting into fifths. The first touches the edge of Adonis's hand coming down the spear and ends at his foot. The second defines the front of Adonis's body and the putti's body and ends at Adonis's foot. The third cuts through the tree at the top, the side of Venus, and the white cloth Venus is sitting on. The fourth ends at Venus's foot. Now look how the diagonals joining the tops and bottoms of some of these fifths define a solid triangular shape and the placement of the figures. The first two diagonals are defining both sides of Venus's body. The next diagonal defines the back of the putti. The next two delineate the back of Adonis and the angle of his left leg. None of these lines are accidental. Rubens is aware of how easily things can go wrong in a complex painting, and so he's very careful to build a foundation for his composition. Now look at how Rubens moves us spatially. We follow the arm of the putti along the back of the dog, which guides our attention right, back into the landscape, across the water behind the figures, and then we're pulled forward around the side of Venus. Let's look at the painting again for a moment. This is